If there's one thing that every NBA franchise needs to be successful is a franchise player that can put up amazing performances on a daily basis and game-winning plays while also becoming the leader of the team. However, such players are not easy to find. But even when they are found, many things can affect their public perception regardless of how talented they are. And if there was someone who learned that the hard way, it was Chicago's wing Zach Lavine. Lavine was acquired by the Bulls as a player with a lot of upside that had still to prove he could become a star player and the face of a franchise. But as the years have gone by, he's shown to be among the best young scorers in the league. However, being part of a rebuilding project has reduced his value to the point where many people wonder whether he can be called a true star. Welcome to Courtside. Today, we're taking a look at how good Lavine is and how the situations around him have affected him as an individual. Unlike most other NBA stars, when Zach came into the league, no one expected him to become a star player. He wasn't considered as one of the most talented players in his class neither. He had an outstanding rookie season that made him look like a draft day steal. That was caused mainly by two facts. First, the Wolves were coming off their best season in almost a decade and decided to retain most of the players that helped them get there, given that all were more experienced than the rookie. Then, almost 2 months after the draft ceremony took place, Minnesota acquired first overall pick Andrew Wiggins from the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for star big man Kevin Love, thus making Zach only the second best prospect on the team. What followed was the addition of Karl Anthony Towns in the next draft, thus giving Lavine a third wheel role in the rebuilding process. However, even behind the 2 first overall picks, and despite having an inconsistent role at first, he was able to stand out and make a name for himself. During his first 2 seasons, he earned international recognition by winning back-to-back titles in the slam dunk contest and what have been described as 2 of the most exciting performances in recent years. At the same time, he had a few offensive outbursts that showed he was capable of providing elite scoring along with Towns and Wiggins, and he solidified that belief during his 3rd season after becoming a full-time starter and proving he was more than just a bench player or an elite dunking machine. But his breakout season was cut short after tearing the ACL on his left knee, and then when the offseason started, the Wolves decided to speed up the rebuild by acquiring Jimmy Butler via trade and sending Lavine in exchange to the Chicago Bulls. The injury severely limited his availability during his first season in Chicago, as he was only able to play in 24 games and was not at full strength. However, he was still able to put up some decent numbers and have a couple of performances where it became clear he could regain his original form without too much trouble. In the following year, now fully healthy, Zach was able to not only take his production to where it was before tearing his ACL, but also elevate his game to prove he could be the Bulls' leader on offense. Then, during last season, he put up all-star numbers and had a few astonishing performances, while also averaging career highs in most categories. However, that was not enough to earn him a spot in the All-Star team or to convince the public perception he had emerged as a true star in the league. But that has more to do with the way the Bulls have performed with him as their best player than with the actual way Lavine has played during the last couple of seasons. Since trading Butler to Minnesota, Chicago decided to go all in rebuild mode. That meant the plan would be to try to acquire as much young talent as possible while also enduring a few disappointing seasons along the way. But after only 2 seasons of rebuilding, the team declared the goal heading into last season would be to compete for a playoff spot. And even while competing for Eastern Conference's lower seeds doesn't require an elite roster, it's safe to say the Bulls weren't prepared to take that step yet. Last season, Chicago ranked as the 3rd youngest team in the NBA, and only 2 Bulls were older than Lavine. Among the players who were expected to carry the load along with him, most had played only 3 seasons or less, and a few others were out because of injury most of the season. The Bulls lacked the experience required to compete with the rest of the teams in the league. Young players usually struggle with finding consistency and learning what their role should be in given situations, and that was one of the main reasons why the team couldn't develop a rhythm despite playing in the East. But it's not the only one. Coach Jim Boylan failed to develop a game plan that put his players in positions to succeed and instead forced them to play in ways they were not comfortable with. Lauri Markkanen was an example of that, as the big man suffered regression after a breakout season that had a lot to do with him being forced to play almost exclusively as a stretch 4. In the case of Lavine, his discomfort wasn't as evident on the court. In fact, there were times where he was able to put up an amazing shooting display from long range. However, Boylan asked him not to take as many mid-range shots, and while that could be a reasonable request for most players, the truth is the mid-range is one of Zach's best weapons. So, even while he was able to score at a high rate throughout the whole season, there's a chance he could have been even better as part of a different system, and we could see if that's true as early as next season when Billy Donovan makes his debut as Chicago's new head coach. But even if Donovan can get the most out of his roster, the Bulls might still be needing either some pieces or more experience before making a serious playoff run, especially considering most playoff contenders in the East are getting better during the offseason. So, considering the way Chicago's roster has been built, would it be fair to judge Lavine based on how many games his team wins? By seeing how the Bulls remain near the bottom of the standing despite Zach's heroics, we can reach one conclusion. He's not a superstar player that will be able to lead a mediocre roster to the postseason by himself. He's not a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant, but as we mentioned at the start of this video, no one was expecting him to be such a player. Instead, we could say he's managed to exceed expectations so far, but we could still compare his situation to that of a player with a skill set that's similar to his own. Thus, we can take a look at how the Phoenix Suns have evolved with Devin Booker as their best player. Booker came into the league a season after Lavine and was selected with the 13th pick, but the situation he came into was a different one. While Zach was drafted by a team that had been on the rise before deciding to start a full rebuild, then was traded to another team that had also started to rebuild, Devin joined a Suns team that was already on the decline. And despite being selected with the same pick in consecutive years, both players left a different impression after their rookie seasons were over. During his first year in the league, Zach was looked at as the kind of player who could possibly turn into a quality starter and help players like Wiggins and Towns carry the offensive load, but without being the main option, and that perception remained tied to him until his second season in Chicago. On the other hand, Booker immediately established himself as a player with a huge upside that could eventually turn into the leader of an offense. And by his second season, his scoring leapt forward, impressing the whole basketball world after a 70-point game against Boston. From that moment on, everyone knew Devin was a special player, and the Suns committed to building around him, something Lavine didn't enjoy until his fourth year in the league. But even while the Suns made Booker their franchise player and tried to put pieces around him to help him succeed, the team kept on struggling until last season. Before last season, the team had never won more than 24 games with Devin on board. And though many people believed he'd be better by demanding a trade to a different team, Phoenix eventually stopped looking for young players and instead opted to bring in veterans that could help him win immediately. That, combined with his continued improvement as a player, led to the team's best season since 2015, as well as to an unexpected performance inside the Orlando bubble in which the Suns were the only team with a perfect record and almost secured a spot in the play-in tournament. That stretch helped Booker consolidate himself as a star in the eyes of the public, but even while he was the best player on his team, those performances wouldn't have been possible without the right players around him. That same principle applies to Lavine. While he's not yet to be considered a star in the league, he's already shown the talent to be one. Now, it will be a matter of how long it takes the Bulls to put the right pieces around him so the team can start winning consistently. We can look at Bradley Beal for more reference on that. Despite averaging over 30 points during last season, Beal wasn't named to either the All-Star team or any of the All-NBA teams, and that was because his team couldn't win enough games. And while Chicago could still be 1 or 2 seasons away from contending for a playoff spot, we can be sure about one thing: Zach will keep on putting up amazing performances that only a star would be capable of producing consistently. All in all, it's easy to tell that not all players are judged for how good they are with the basketball in their hands. Lavine is not the first underrated elite scorer in the league, and he certainly won't be the last. But a better look at what he's capable of doing is all that's needed to understand how good he is. And while he may not be leading a team to a championship anytime soon, he should eventually be able to make some noise in the postseason as he keeps working on his game. If the Bulls don't realize that, other teams will, and things could get very interesting for him. But now, what are your thoughts about Zach Lavine? Would you build a team around him? Let us know in the comments. We've hoped you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, give us a like and subscribe to our channel so that you can receive more NBA content. We are Courtside.